Well, I'm going to wade in it today because I was just watching, Megyn Kelly talking about Candace Owens and talking about, Charlie Kirk getting blackmailed and the real story behind what was going on. And it leads into all kinds of conspiracy theories about Israel. And it's, God help us, his role in Charlie Kirk's assassination, if that's the implication, although nobody said it. It's the subtext of what is it that was really going on with Israel and how is this attacking Charlie Kirk. And I want to set that record straight, give you a perspective on that I think will be helpful to you. And it all goes into this, the lion. See, the return of the lion. Jesus is coming back now. He's manifesting in a unique way. Same Jesus. It's just we're looking for a lamb, and he's shaking things up. I want you to get a hold of this book because it talks about the Reformation Charlie has launched in education, in politics, in media. Those are the mountains he went and gave his life to, and bam, that was where he spilt his blood. I want you to call 800-910-6349. Get a hold of lancewallnau.com/lion. And it's a book about the Reformation Hour. And I would say this broadcast is about the danger that can derail the movement that has begun. Hey, this is a special report on the confusion that is setting in on in the aftermath of Charlie Kirk's assassination and martyrdom. And I wanted to address it for whoever. It makes me nervous because some of these videos are going out to 1 million or 2 million people. So I'm aware of the fact that this is spontaneous. I literally sat down and doodled on a board. So you're not getting a whole team editing together content, but it's too critical a conversation to miss right now. You got Candace Owens and Megyn Kelly and Tucker Carlson and numerous voices are all stepping in to the conversation. Now, what happens in a trauma, as we've gone through, is you go through a period of disbelief and depression and anger, and then finally acceptance. We're still working through that phase, and there's a lot of anger, and anger wants to find something. And one of the problems that we've had in our movement is that we have been so conspiracy-oriented, for good reason, those of us that were hunted down from January 6 misrepresentations to the president's 4 trials, to the 2 assassination attempts. Then that was coming out of the COVID and the pharmaceutical world and the battle that's going on regarding that. So we really have a deep-seated distrust in all this, and we keep coming back to a kind of a hope. Donald Trump has a level head and is still prosecuting aggressively that agenda that he went into Washington to express, which is to restore, in a sense, this government back to the people. Now, Charlie Kirk was the key agent in that, and he was the key agent because he was able to catalyze and mobilize an invasion into the under 30 market. And suddenly, Republican conservative ideas and Christianity became acceptable concepts. And this was a threat to hell. And Charlie did it in 3 domains. He did it in the education mountain where he was martyred. He did it in the government mountain where he got Trump elected. And he did it in media with the sound bites of his, prove me wrong, change my mind conversation, which he was so gifted at, like Stephen in the book of Acts. You couldn't withstand or resist him. You could only kill him. And so where we are now is there's this fumbling around agitation. Now, here's my concern. I'll be very clear about it. There is a spirit of involving principalities and powers that want to bring that conspiracy itch and that agitation into questioning everything. Even Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, guys that are on our side, are up there on the Hill getting grilled and pounded, and they want to pull these people out of position because they're willing to do what they have to do to go after the infrastructure of the left that feeds the 1,000 or so organizations that make up the radical base, from the radical environmentalism that would burn down Tesla dealerships to the queer, trans, militant community, and the billions of dollars in the industry that come in with the trans pharmaceutical and all that stuff. So you're getting into the money realm as well as the ideologic realm. And Kirk was pushing back on that so vigorously that you could say the viper came out of the heat and struck him. Now, here's where we're at in the movement, which is why we got to be cautious, because there's an element here that's getting in of conspiracy that is anti-Semitic. I'm not saying the people are, but you'll see right now, I'm just discovering the degree to which there's voltage on the Israel subject. Well, because the Antichrist is going to be anti-Israel and anti-Christian. And so Israel is eventually, you guys are Christians, right? You guys, we all have this little conversation at some point. Where's American prophecy? It's like, where is it? You got all these countries named. It's almost like we're not even there. And the big concern I have in the back of my mind is, well, where is America in the future? Because if we turn our back on Israel, I think it might be a decisively self-destructive decision for us as a nation. And when the movement that Charlie has, the majority of them, 30 years old and younger, are anti-Israel, well, the future of that movement doesn't bode well for us. We better get this thing right. And now I'm talking as though it was a conversation that Charlie would totally be in on, because he was going as an evangelist, an evangelical, preaching Christ in all these arenas. His firm commitment was to God first, his family, and his country. And so with God first, he was going in and prying open the minds of these mind molders, from youth and education, academia, to politics, to, as I said, media. And he was making a way for the gospel to be proclaimed. That was his goal, and he was doing it effectively. And along the way, he applied biblical wisdom, or the wisdom of the just is what it's called in Luke, to all sorts of systems and issues which you have to sort out, because if you let the devil sort it out for you, you'll have open borders. You'll end up with your $35 trillion of debt. You'll crash the economy. You'll have blue state laws where you got that terrible slashing of the Ukrainian girl on that subway, the train. And there's this rage over the lawlessness of the left, but man, they aren't backing down. On the Hill, they're powerful still. They're in the minority, and they're punching way above their weight. And they're in the media right now, lying. And if you ever watch the Steve Bannon cold opens, it's kind of like you almost have to take a Tylenol before you do it, because Steve forces us to watch. I don't watch any of those channels, but you better take a look at the montages, because it's what the demons are programming people to say. And trust me, if you're living in that world, which is half the country listening to those sources, then they're not hearing what you're hearing right now. So here's the verse that I want to say. In any movement like this, when a leader withdraws their footprint, as I'll call it, like the dominant ministry, in the case of Paul as the apostle, he goes to Ephesus. And here's the moment I want you to think about. He says, as he's meeting with the leaders, I have not shunned to declare to you the whole counsel of God. Therefore, take heed to yourselves and to all the flock among which the Holy Spirit has made you overseers, to shepherd the church of God, which he purchased with his own blood. Now, here's the verse. For I know this, that after my departure, savage wolves will come in among you, not sparing the flock. And from among your own movement will arise individuals speaking things that are perverting the truth to draw away an audience after themselves. That word for perversion of truth is misleading things. They could be sincere and still misleading. And you got to remember, not everybody that is the mouthpiece of the MAGA movement is under the same kind of judicial restraint that Charlie had, because he could go back to the Word of God, go back to Pastor Jack Hibbs, go back to Rob McCoy. He had a circle of people that were speaking to him regarding grounding him and keeping him in the tension of biblical reality. And he was caught in the tempest of all kinds of voices. Tucker Carlson, for instance, a very important part of our community. We've had him speak at our events and help to fund those events with Charlie. So I work as someone who helps support Charlie. I work with business people that get behind his turning point. Now, I didn't like the interview that he did with Ted Cruz. Ted got caught flat-footed, I think, because Tucker has a kind of an idea. He doesn't share Charlie's biblical worldview on the land of Israel, Israel having a right to its own land in terms of its own its geography. The fact that Israel is the birthplace, not only the Messiah, but of the apostles and the movement and the prophets preceding, and that there's a special relationship believers have with the interests of that small, struggling territory, which we always say is the size of New Jersey in the Middle East. And so Tucker doesn't share that kind of sentiment, but that doesn't make him an evil person. And in fact, Tucker's a reasonable person. But he was a friend of Charlie's, and he had his worldview. Now, what they were saying, you have to go back in time, because people are all going to go back and say, oh, Bibi Netanyahu and Israel, maybe they're behind this. And this is like a sick and I would say it falls under the category of from among your own selves, there's perverse things being said in order to divide the movement. If Charlie could be reincarnated right now, he would say, do not let this violence divide our movement. Do not let the violence divide us. We've actually got them framed right now. We've got them framed as a party of violence. And they always lie about it, and they say, well, there's problems on both sides. Well, I didn't see that during the cities that were being burned down. I didn't see that during the BLM riots. I didn't see that in the Antifa uprising. I didn't see that in the 200 cities that had uprisings. I didn't see it ever exposed in the funding channels behind that. And that's where Kash Patel and Pam Bondi are being cut with 1,000 blades by people who they're not doing enough. But understand something. They're dealing with an entrenched power structure that no one's ever been able to ferret out. Now's the moment. Now's the moment when there's enough resolve and justification to change that fake narrative. You saw Gutfeld the other night explode on a live program when somebody was trying to say, well, there's problems on both sides. He says, no longer is that narrative acceptable. The majority of the death threats, the reason why we wear body armor and have security isn't to protect us from conservatives and shofar-blowing Catholics. It's to protect us from the radical left, which radicalizes and then creates a valorization of the people, like Mangione killing that CEO. That bothered Charlie. He saw where that was going. Now private citizens you have assassination of people in media, like Charlie, and in business. Why? Because there's a death cult. It's called black-pilled. They get black-pilled into seeing people that are ideologically different, not as different, but as enemies to be destroyed. So Charlie understood that. In our movement right now, we have to be careful. We have important people that speak into it. Megyn Kelly, Tucker, Don Jr., Steve Bannon. And our movement cannot fragment on its focus. And that distrust that we have in institutions is now turning its guns on our own side. And I fear to say that clicks and audience ratings are going to flow like a river. Candace Owens, you're going to see a surge over the issue that, Bibi Netanyahu read a letter on Fox where Charlie affirmed his support for Israel, but he didn't read the entire letter. Well, maybe the letter says something like, and even having said that, I am concerned about the United States being drawn into an unnecessary commitment into war in the Middle East. I stand 100% behind Israel, but I have my concerns. Charlie might have said that. Why? Because here's the picture I want you to see. I'm going to go Glenn Beck for a minute here. At the time that everybody's talking about who's really behind this thing, and Candace Owens and Megyn are postulating that Charlie was under the threat of blackmail and threat from the Jews, the Bill Aikman or something, and the pro-Israeli lobby, and he took it personally because his character was being attacked. When you're in the spiritual zone that he was in, the warfare is intense, people. He had, on one hand, Iran and Israel. You have Steve Bannon hammering away in the program right before Charlie speaks about the Netanyahu's dragging us into this thing. The Israelis we are not going to go to war in the Middle East. And Trump, I think I was told Trump actually had to back Charlie down because Charlie went to him about expressing his concern about our engagement in the Middle East. And basically, but Charlie came back from that heated exchange, you could say, with the comment, we got to trust the president and pray for him. He'll do the right thing. That was his conclusion. And did he do the right thing? He took out what would be a nuclear threat that I promise you would be targeting the United States, the big Satan. Trump moved the clock back on the danger of a nuclear Iran being able to deliver a payload and redefine the Middle East with terror cells. But his support for Israel was transparent, which is why he felt hurt that people would be attacking him. For what? Because he was also hearing the Epstein dialogue. And this would be coming from Tucker and from others who were saying, how do we know that there wasn't blackmail or Mossad working with Epstein? Well, it could be the Mossad. It could be the CIA and the Mossad. You think that Brennan and Clapper and Comey don't have their counterparts in Israel and the intelligence community? And maybe there was something there. Maybe there is something there, but it comes down to I'm saying it's a narrower part of the story than people are making it. Because what they're moving to and bleeding into dangerously is the idea that Netanyahu and Israel is somehow culpable and evil and involved in subterfuge and dissemination of information. Charlie would not want that to be the conclusion. So he allowed people to come to his Turning Point July event that came in, like Tucker, who will expose his Israel thinking, in his confrontation with Ted Cruz. But understand, he's got all that pressure. What about going here and talking about that? Because he's America first. And if America's interests are being compromised by the deep state intelligence community, we ought to know. That's our MAGA philosophy, and that's his. At the same time, I'm 100% supporting Israel. That doesn't mean that Israel is all an Epstein blackmail pedophile ring, which is where the brain has a blood-brain barrier. It slips over into that, and a whole bunch of people who are anti-Israel go, oh, he's covering up for Netanyahu. Netanyahu's threatening him or blackmailing him. He offers him money. Now, I get more information today because people will send it to me, and I'm thankful to all the people that keep me informed of this stuff. But Megyn Kelly has a conversation now where she's kind of defending Candace about her saying that Netanyahu is misleading people regarding Charlie. And I'm even reading in chat threads that are being reprinted by other MAGA leaders. Oh, there was, a jet that took off privately near the university, which was owned by a Jewish guy. And so the implication is this was like a Jewish assassination plot. Why? Against the guy that is supporting Israel? The Epstein thing is moving in its own way. Netanyahu would be involved with an attack on Charlie Kirk. This is the crazy zone. This is where you get into from among your own selves. Will people arise speaking things that are perverse and misleading in order to draw an audience after themselves? It's tragic when an apostolic leader withdraws their footprint. This is what goes. This has been around since Acts chapter 20. So here Charlie is working on those tensions. And that's what's going on in him during the period that he has a meeting in the Hamptons with high-level donors, and he's concerned about the under 30 crowd being anti-Israel, and he doesn't want that to go in that direction. But he's also hearing the Epstein story, which came out in his rally, so that unfortunately, I think in July, it wasn't the best thing to have these young people that are anti-Israel all screaming about the president has to deal with Epstein, because that makes it sound like the next generation already has an inclination towards anti-Israel, and now that's like solidified in that way. And that was happening in July. So the question was, well, don't bring Tucker in. And Charlie's attitude is, because you don't want me to, I'm going to. Because Charlie's a free thinker. He wants the truth on this. He is totally in support of Israel. He's not an enemy to Israel or Netanyahu. He is, at that time, we were worried about getting drawn into a war because of Israel, which was dealt with. So what's the real story? The real battle is the under 30 crowd that doesn't like Israel, is the future of our disengagement with Israel. And I'm telling you, as a Bible-believing Christian, America cannot subdivide Israel. It cannot side with the destruction of Israel or abandon its friend there. I'm not saying we have to be an interventionist on their behalf, but Trump is playing it exactly right. He's balancing this out with a kind of like a Solomon-like sense of the weight of what factors are important and what factors aren't. I trust him. We prayed him in. He's doing a good job. But the real battle is hell controls the education. Man, don't let this subject, don't let the intrigue of Candace says this and Bill Ackman says this, and I'll play you some of the, I got the footage. I want to play it for you. But I don't want, the battle in education is we must take back the universities. They have catch this, they have a 30-to-1 ratio of left-wing professors educating our children, our sons and daughters, our future leaders, with a left-wing Marxist anti-American bias for and it wouldn't be bad, except they're taking our money taxpayer money in order to do that in the university. The first thing I would do is I'd say, we want to have an act where we at least have a 30%, that would be massive, representation of a Judeo-Christian founded worldview that's pro-American so that, like Charlie, people can at least have an option of the other side of the argument, rather than having this factory that's producing radicals that are dangerous. The other part of the battle is government. We have midterms coming up. We've got momentum right now. This is the time we sweep as much of the power structure away so that we can have sunlight on all of the underground organizations, and how Arabella, that massive conglomerate of 5 different corporate structures with 100 lawyers, where the left-wing billionaire class and millionaire class and foundations funnel $1.8 billion into their nefarious streams of activists. If you want to go after the money, that's going to be a huge situation right there, but no one's even talking about it. And then you have this. Our own camp even is in the business of distracting us from the real battle. So my appeal to you is don't let our movement become divided by conspiracy theories ad nauseum that do not lead to the sweeping of power structures away from those high places of education, politics, and let our media be bringing cohesion to our movement and not dividing it up into subgroups that are anti-Israel, conspiracy this, the shooter is this, or this is that. And let's pray for Cash and pray for Bongino. They're not in the cover-up business. That's the old program we got to be careful about. They're under siege. All right, so let's just dive in real quick and let me give you a bit of the Candace Owens, the Candace-Meghan conversation that stimulated me to do this special report.
But Ackman did go on X and said, I've been slandered by Candace Owens. She'll be responding, I'm sure, shortly, of staging an intervention with Charlie in which threats were made. He says it's not true. At no time have I ever threatened Charlie, Turning Point, or anyone associated with him. I've never blackmailed anyone, let alone Charlie. I've never offered Charlie or Turning Point any money in an attempt to influence them. I connected with Charlie when he had DM'd me in late May of this year and expressed interest in meeting me. On the Zoom, he explained to me that conservatives, in particular young ones, were getting tired of defending Israel, and this was very concerning to him. He suggested, Bill Ackman says, Charlie, that recruiting a group of junior Charlie Kirks who could host open mic sessions on college campuses would be an effective way to encourage debate on a host of issues, an approach he believed to be worthy of consideration and better enable students to get to the truth. I was interested in learning more. We scheduled a series of conference calls between Turning Point staff members and members of my team, and then we assembled this diverse group of influencers for a day-and-a-half session. We chose the afternoon of August 4th to the afternoon of August 5th for the convening. Charlie and members of my team worked to put together. I offered to host the sessions so that I could attend some. Charlie sent out the invitations. About 35 or so influencers accepted. Charlie and Turning Point put together the agenda. Some were critical of Israel. Some were supportive. At the end, I sat with Charlie and members of my team. We discussed the events of the evening. Charlie believed he had identified a number of potential Turning Point ambassadors who could launch open mic events on campus and would then follow up with them. We agreed to keep in touch thereafter. We corresponded by text over the next few weeks. This was not an intervention to blackmail Charlie into adopting certain views on Israel. It was nothing of the sort. Candace did respond in part on X last night, saying, I know feigning victimhood is kind of an Israeli brand thing, but I was clear that Charlie felt blackmailed by the offer to fund TPUSA, which he refused.
Feigning victimhood is kind of an Israeli thing. Candace is an anti-Semite, I think. And I think she's been delving into the research she's done for a long time, and I think she's gone off the rails. She's being treated as though she's really, lucid. But feigning victimhood, which is kind of an Israeli thing, that line right there, it reveals, in other words, this is what you Jews do. You act like you're the victim. Remember that line. All right, go ahead and pick it up.
Try to resist the urge to rewrite history. And she goes on saying people in attendance did characterize it as an intervention. Here is where I'm going with it. Oh, and by the way, I should mention, this is important. Andrew Colvett, who is Charlie's right-hand man at Turning Point, we know him well, wrote the following. I've been asked about this weekend event with Bill Ackman more than a few times now, so I asked our staff who were traveling with Charlie to find out what's true. His team was with him 100% of the time when he was not in his hotel room. Here's what they told me. Bill never yelled at Charlie, never pressed him on BB, never gave him a list of Charlie's offenses against Israel. There was concern raised about having Tucker at the Student Action Summit. We don't believe this came from Bill. And Charlie's reply was, honestly, people telling me not to have Tucker makes me want to have Tucker. And I am going to lock him in for AmFest, too. Charlie personally told me, says Andrew, he had a very cordial relationship with Bill and the event was productive. Those are the facts.
All right, so stop right there. So Candace is making it sound like Charlie went out to an event where he was blackmailed, he was confronted, he came back stunned, dazed, and confused and had threats that were made in some veiled way with the word blackmail again, connected with the Epstein, situation. And you see where the conspiracy brain goes. And it's like a virus. It'll take you down the rabbit hole. There's more to this. I can't cover it I committed myself to like just doing 25 minutes here. I will pick up on this and we'll play the rest of the Megyn Kelly interview and her point. Because Charlie was wounded by the character assassination attempts, the attacks against him. So that's what you all want to be very careful, because I have said something about Candace. I think she's got a poison pill. She doesn't know it. But Tucker, Megyn Kelly, the folks that are involved with this whole thing, at the time that this is happening, we have this as a burning issue over what's the role of Mossad in this, and the CIA, I might add. But support of Israel still, biblically, not wavering. And if you want to know what his theology is or who is talking to him, just go watch Jack Hibbs' interesting podcast as a rebuttal to the Tucker Carlson interview with Ted, giving a far better answer than Ted gave. And we are past the crisis, but this created a tremendous, Israel-Iran war in the Middle East, plus the Epstein files, produced a lot of pressure on Charlie. And by July, it was kind of, the ethos was crackling with it as he was having all these speakers down at Turning Point with their different perspectives on these subjects. But now in the aftermath of all that, what I'm pleading is be careful not to lose the moment. The moment now is for us to take what Charlie wanted to do, which is to raise up, let's say, 100 brand ambassadors, Charlie Kirks, that would go into the open mics of universities. That was what he was looking for. That's what they were going to fund. There's a word, I think that threat alone added to the escalation of hell over, we got to stop this guy. He's going to, before we know it, that influence right there is going to have a direct influence here, and he's not stoppable because he's getting 100 million views off of every one of these debates he's having. I say keep doing what the devil doesn't want. Keep your eye on the prize. We have midterm elections coming up. Let's make sure that the left does not have any authority anywhere in the country, right on down to dog catcher, as far as I'm concerned. Let's expose the funding and the infrastructure of the violence that has been happening in America and the organizations that are doing it. We're winning the public persuasion battle right now. The left is looking weaker and weaker. They're at 30-70 on every issue, 80-20 on a lot, meaning 70% of America is not with them. Recent study done by Rutgers University says that over 50% of left-wing people surveyed could justify violence, political violence, under certain conditions. So you have a worldview that the left itself has to clean up. It's not shared in our movement, which is why we don't have George Floyd riots in the aftermath of the murder of a young man, 31 years old, who was trying to have civil discourse. Instead, we had prayer meetings and vigils where idiots come in and scream and yell and bring curses out and get appropriately thumped. So this is a moment to keep clear. We are winning. Let's not turn our swords against each other, and beware of the voices that rise up, as Paul warned, that from among your own selves, from among your own influencers, will people arise speaking things that, now the word perverse there means just different than what I said, different than what Charlie said, out of balance with what Charlie was trying to accomplish, in order to build a personal clique following. Beware of that. I'll get some hate mail over this. Pray for me in Jesus' name. I'm just telling you the way I see it, and I'm willing to change anytime I get better information. But I've called it right since I called out Trump in 2016 and said, there's your Cyrus. And I've been right pretty much on all these things since then, and have nothing in social media to have to apologize for, because I've spoken the truth openly. Lord, I pray for the unity of our leadership, from Megan to Tucker to Don Jr. to Candace to Steve Bannon. I pray that you will restrain the agitation and the anger, looking for an answer with the assumption that there's a cover-up. And I pray that what's hidden in the darkness will be brought to the light. What needs to be exposed will be exposed, and that this movement that has begun will not fragment because of conspirator theories that only distract from the real opportunity, in Jesus' name. Let me throw this in here real quick. Before all of this broke out, while we were yet in the middle of the Iran-Israel conflict with the United States, I wrote a book called The Return of the Lion. I believe Jesus is coming back with a roar. He's coming back like Charlie Kirk, to push back on the darkness, to not back down. Now's not the time for us to be pointing fingers at each other and beating up on Bibi. Now's the time for us to go into the territories and take the tops of these mountains. You can get this at lancewallnau.com/lion virtually for free. Give it for your gift of any amount. Just go get it, download it, or have it shipped to you. It talks about how we're in an hour of reformation. The revival we keep looking for is actually subset to the actual thing. America's the land of revival. We've never had a reformation. When you start changing institutions like this, that's called reformation, and reformations have a lot of explosions. It's time that we went on the offense and not the defense. Revival and reformation is what we're doing right now. Get the book or call 1-800-910-6349 and get it for yourself. It's 56 pages, easy to read, and it's not what is typically preached these days. Talk to you later.
Jesus is returning. His administration is a lion. He's coming back as a ruler and a judge. That's part of what the tension is about this fresh manifestation of what's going on on the earth. A lot of Christians are used to Jesus, the redemptive Jesus. He's still redemptive Jesus, but he's shaking things up. Want you to find out about this for your gift of any amount. I wrote the book so it's easy to read in one sitting. lancewallnau.com/lion. Or you can call 1-800-910-6349. And in it, I talk about the 7 steps of what's happening in the Middle East right now and what Jesus is doing as a Jew ruling upon the throne of David, the Lion of Judah, and why anti-Semitism is on the rise and how the people of God will deal with it. All that's in here. lancewallnau.com/lion. Your gift of any amount.
Call 1-800-910-6349 or visit lancewallnau.com/lion. With your gift of any amount, you'll receive this prophetic resource. The lion is roaring. Are you listening?
Did you enjoy this latest episode? Please remember to share it with your friends, because the more knowledge you have, the better equipped you are to